The city skyline shimmered through the glass walls of my office, a canvas of gold and steel beneath the fading afternoon light. My reflection looked back at me, calm, polished, untouchable, the woman I'd built from the ashes of who I used to be. The silk of my blouse whispered against my skin as I leaned forward, signing the last page of a contract that would seal a seven-figure deal. Somewhere deep inside, a younger version of me smiled. My phone buzzed on the desk, a notification banner flashing a name I hadn't seen in years: Ethan Whitmore, my ex-fiancé. For a moment, I just stared. The sound of distant traffic hummed below, but all I could hear was the echo of laughter, their laughter from that rehearsal dinner years ago. The sting of humiliation pressed at the back of my throat, just as sharp as it had been that night. Curiosity won. I opened the message. It was short, polite, and painfully ironic. Saw the news about your company, Claire. Congratulations. My parents send their regards. My lips curved, not in a smile, but something colder. His parents. The same people who once mocked my late father in front of 100 guests, as if his memory was a joke. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. For years, I'd stayed silent. Let them think I'd disappeared into nothing. But maybe it was time they finally saw what that nothing became. And this time, I wouldn't be the one trembling. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers and champagne laughter, the kind that comes too easily when people have never known struggle. I remember smoothing my pale blue dress, trying to quiet the tremor in my hands. Ethan's mother had chosen the venue, an upscale country club overlooking Lake Geneva, all white linens and gold accents. Everything screamed money, and I tried my best to fit in. Ethan was charming, confident, the kind of man everyone expected to succeed. I adored him once. Or maybe I adored the way he made me believe I finally belonged somewhere. Then it happened. Someone at the head table made a joke about humble beginnings, and Ethan's father chuckled, swirling his wine. Like Claire's dad, he said. Didn't he fix cars? What was the word, mechanic? The guests laughed politely. Ethan didn't stop them. He just smiled, that same tight smile he used when I said something he thought was embarrassing. I tried to laugh it off, but then his mother joined in. At least she upgraded, she said lightly, eyes gleaming with condescension. From grease stains to cufflinks. That's progress, isn't it? Something inside me cracked. I stared at my plate, blinking hard. My father's face flashed in my mind, oil-streaked hands, the smell of motor grease, the way he used to wipe sweat from his brow and say, "Work hard, kiddo." Dignity's in the effort, not the suit. He died 3 years earlier. That night, they mocked the man who taught me the meaning of pride. When Ethan laughed, even just a little, I felt the air leave my lungs. I excused myself, stood up from the table, and every eye followed. Outside, the night was cold. I clutched the small silver watch my dad had given me before he passed, the only thing of his I had left. My hands shook so badly I could barely read the engraving. Keep time with your heart. And in that moment, I decided I wouldn't let anyone, not Ethan, not his family, measure my worth again. I walked away from the dinner, the ring heavy in my pocket, and didn't look back. That was the night Claire Miller died, and the woman I am now began to live. The morning after I walked out of that dinner, I woke up in my small apartment to the sound of rain tapping against the window. My engagement ring sat on the nightstand, glinting under the dull gray light, a silent witness to everything I'd lost and everything I was about to fight for. I had no job, no savings worth mentioning, and no plan except one stubborn thought. I refused to be the woman they pitted. That's how it began. I started working as an assistant at a small marketing agency downtown. It wasn't glamorous. I fetched coffee, managed spreadsheets, and took notes in meetings I barely understood. But I listened. I learned. I absorbed every detail, every pitch, every failure and success around me. I stayed late after everyone left, watching tutorials, sketching logo ideas, teaching myself design and strategy. My mentor came in the form of a woman named Janet, a senior executive with silver-streaked hair and a voice that could cut through arrogance like glass. She noticed me one night as I hunched over a cluttered desk. "You've got fire, Miller," she said, handing me a stale cookie from the vending machine. "Don't let anyone convince you to dim it." That became my motto. Months turned into years. I climbed the ladder slowly, then quickly. When the agency downsized, I used my severance check to launch a tiny consulting startup from my kitchen. I called it Heartline Media, after the words engraved on my father's watch. At first, it was chaos, sleepless nights, cheap coffee, rejection emails piling up. But then came my first client, a local bakery struggling to stay afloat. I poured everything into their rebrand. Within months, their business doubled. Word spread. Calls started coming in. My calendar filled up faster than I could handle. Every milestone carried a quiet victory. My first signed contract. My first employee. The first office, a narrow, drafty space with peeling paint and a leaky window, but mine. There were nights when exhaustion blurred my vision, when I'd stare at the city lights and whisper to myself, "He'd be proud of me, Dad." I didn't post updates, didn't brag, didn't need to. The people who had once mocked me didn't deserve a front-row seat to my rebuilding. 5 years later, Heartline Media had grown into a multi-million-dollar agency representing national brands. I became the woman I used to envy. Composed, decisive, respected. But behind every polished deal and every confident smile, there was still that memory. The laughter at the rehearsal dinner, the burn of humiliation I swore I'd never feel again. I never expected to see them again. But fate, as it turns out, has a cruel sense of humor and an impeccable sense of timing. Because one Tuesday morning, as my assistant walked in holding a new client file, I froze at the name printed across the top. Whitmore Enterprises. For a long moment, I just stared at the folder on my desk. Whitmore Enterprises. The same company Ethan's father had bragged about at every social event, the family empire built on heritage and prestige. "Should I schedule a call?" my assistant Maria asked. I took a steady breath, my pulse quickening. "Yes," I said. "Tell them I'll meet them in person." 2 days later, they walked into my office. Ethan, his mother, and his father, the unholy trinity of my past. My office sat on the 32nd floor, all glass and sunlight, overlooking downtown Chicago. Every detail reflected the life I'd built. Marble floors, framed campaigns from global clients, and one small photo on my desk, me and my dad, standing in front of his old auto shop, grease stains on his shirt and pride in his smile. Ethan's mother was the first to notice it. Her eyes flicked toward the photo, then back to me, confusion shadowing her perfectly powdered face. "Claire," Ethan said softly, his voice tentative. "It's been a long time." "Has it?" I replied, gesturing toward the chairs across from my desk. "Please sit. I understand you're looking for a rebranding partner." Ethan's father adjusted his cufflinks, clearly uncomfortable. "We're expanding into the sustainability market," he said. "Your agency's reputation is impressive." I folded my hands, deliberately calm. "Thank you. We take pride in authenticity, in honoring our roots." The irony didn't miss me. For the next 20 minutes, they presented their proposal. I listened, nodding occasionally, letting them sweat under the weight of my silence. Ethan's gaze kept drifting to the awards on my shelf, the Forbes plaque, the Top Women in Business feature framed on the wall. I caught the flicker of realization in his eyes. This wasn't just a successful woman. This was me, the woman they'd laughed at. When they finished, I leaned back. "I appreciate your presentation," I said evenly. "But before we discuss terms, I need to clarify something." They all looked up. 5 years ago, I continued, my voice steady but edged with steel, your company's heir and his family publicly mocked a man at a rehearsal dinner. My father. A mechanic. A man who taught me everything about hard work and respect. Ethan's face paled. His mother shifted uncomfortably. His father tried to speak, but I lifted a hand, a quiet command. I walked away from that table humiliated. I started this agency 2 weeks later. Every decision I've made since has been fueled by one promise: that I would never let anyone make me feel small again. The silence that followed was thick, almost sacred. Finally, Ethan whispered, "Claire, I didn't mean." "Oh, you meant it," I interrupted gently. "You all did, and that's fine, because your words built this." I gestured to the office around me, the floor-to-ceiling view, the gold lettering on the wall. Heartline Media. Ethan's mother's voice cracked. "We didn't know you'd become successful." I finished for her. "You didn't think I could." I stood, walking toward the window. "I'll consider your proposal," I said after a pause. "But not because I owe you anything. Because I believe in second chances, for companies willing to change their culture." Ethan's father cleared his throat. "We would be honored to work with you." When they left, the elevator doors closing behind them, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for 5 years. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the rush of long-overdue justice. I looked down at the photo of my dad and whispered, "We did it." Outside, the city lights flickered like applause. The next morning, my assistant handed me a new folder, Whitmore Enterprises, contract draft. I stared at it for a long time, the irony thick as the coffee in my hand. I could have rejected them outright. God knows they deserved it. But something deeper inside me whispered, power isn't just walking away, it's deciding who gets to stay, and on what terms. When Ethan and his parents returned for the final meeting, I made sure the conference room reflected everything they once said I could never have. The long walnut table gleamed under soft lighting. Art from local female artists lined the walls. The Heartline logo shimmered behind me, elegant, assertive, proud. Ethan's mother spoke first, her tone softer this time. "Claire, we want to sincerely apologize for how things were handled years ago. We were cruel." I finished gently. "You were cruel." Her face flushed. "Yes." Ethan leaned forward. "We all were. I should have defended you. I didn't. I was a coward." I studied him for a long moment. The arrogance that once defined him had dissolved into quiet remorse. I believed his regret, but that didn't mean I owed him forgiveness. "Here's how this will work," I said, sliding a new set of terms across the table. "Heartline Media will handle your campaign, but only if you agree to 3 conditions." Ethan's father frowned. "Conditions?" "Yes." My voice was calm, but carried weight. "First, your campaign will feature real working-class individuals. Mechanics, janitors, construction workers, teachers. People like my father. You'll pay them fairly and credit their stories publicly." They nodded slowly. "Second," I continued, "Whitmore Enterprises will create a scholarship fund, the Daniel Miller Foundation, for underprivileged students pursuing trade skills. It will carry my father's name permanently." Ethan's mother blinked, eyes glistening. "Of course," she whispered. "It's the least we can do." "And third," I paused, looking directly at Ethan, "you will personally visit every scholarship recipient each year and tell them that dignity doesn't come from wealth, it comes from respect." My father believed that. "You should, too." He swallowed hard. "I will." The room went silent again, heavy but cleansing. I felt something inside me settle, the final piece of the old pain unclenching. "Then we have a deal," I said, signing the document. As they left, Ethan lingered by the door. "Claire," he said softly, "you turned pain into purpose. You're incredible." I smiled faintly. "No, Ethan. I just learned to stop needing approval from people who never earn my respect." He nodded, eyes downcast, and followed his parents out. When the door closed, I let myself breathe, really breathe. The kind of breath that fills your lungs with freedom. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. For the first time since my father's death, I felt peace, not because they'd changed, but because I had. 3 months later, I stood under a soft gray sky at Maplewood Cemetery, a single white rose in my hand. The autumn wind rustled through the trees, scattering amber leaves over the grass. My father's headstone stood simple and solid, just like him. I knelt, brushing away the leaves from the engraved words, "Daniel Miller, A good man who worked with his hands and led with his heart. They finally know your name now, Dad, I whispered, smiling through the tightness in my throat. The foundation's up and running. You'd like it. Kids with grease on their hands and fire in their eyes. Just like you. A light rain began to fall, cool and gentle. I tilted my face to the sky, closing my eyes as the droplets mixed with the warmth of silent tears. For the first time in years, they weren't born from pain, but gratitude. After that day, life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it felt real. My company thrived, my team grew, and every scholarship award ceremony became a reminder that strength can rise from humiliation, that dignity can outlast cruelty. One evening, as I walked through the office alone, my heels echoing on the marble floor, I stopped by the photo wall. Pictures of our projects, our team, our clients. In the center hung a new frame, a group of scholarship students standing beside a newly built training center. Above the entrance, bold and gleaming, was a plaque that read, "The Daniel Miller Foundation, powered by Heartline Media." I touched the glass, smiling softly. "You see, Dad," I whispered. "They mocked your name once. Now it stands for opportunity." In the reflection, I caught my own image, older, stronger, at peace. My silk blouse still carried that faint scent of jasmine I always wore when I needed courage. I walked to my desk and picked up his old watch. The second hand ticked steadily, just like the day he gave it to me. I fastened it around my wrist, the same wrist that once trembled as I left that dinner. Now, it didn't shake at all. I looked out over the glittering city lights and breathed in the quiet satisfaction of closure. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't making them feel small. It's showing them you never needed them to feel whole.